Now, a triathlon swim start is often quite a daunting and chaotic affair, but imagine getting such a good swim start that you leave all that chaos behind you and in your wake.
Well, that is what we're here for. Today, we've got our top tips to help you get your fastest swim start possible.
Well, firstly, are you one of those athletes that feels like the swim in a triathlon is almost an extended warm-up for the race ahead? Well, you're definitely not alone if that is the case, but we would fully recommend that you do get a good warm-up in before you start the race and before you start that swim. And that's for a few reasons. One, obviously to warm the body up and get that blood pumping around and being able to apply as much power and force through the water and ultimately swim as best as you possibly can. Secondly, so that you get a feel for the water temperature, particularly if it is colder, so it's not such a shock to the body and the system. And then thirdly, so that you get used to the conditions in the water, be that the choppiness, the current, but also the clarity of the water, maybe the murkiness of the water. Now, on the subject of water temperature, in the case that the water temperature is rather cold, you may not want to get into the water. Perhaps it's simply because there's the risk of getting cold between that warm-up and the race starts, or the event organisers simply won't let you in full stop. In that instance, I would at least suggest partially submerging yourself, so at least you're getting your hands, your feet, and maybe splashing your face. So again, still getting a slight acclimatization without fully getting into the water.
Being familiar with the swim layer and the start of the race is key to making sure you get away from that start line as quick as possible. So make sure you've checked out the course in detail and you've had a good look at what the start entails. Is it a running beach start? Is it a deep water start? Is it a diving off a pontoon? Make sure you've got that nailed and in your mind you know what to expect and that you've really studied where that first buoy marker is, because that's where you've got to head to. Make sure if it's quite a small marker, you've got something up higher above it that you can sight from as well, and you know what colour it is and if it looks different to any of the other buoys, because when you're in the water it's much harder to see. If it is a deep water start, make sure you allow yourself plenty of time to get to that start line, get yourself in the right position on the start line so you're prepared and you're ready to go as soon as that gun goes off. Choosing the correct position at the start is key to getting away fast in the swim. So if it's a mass start when you're all lining up, you want to make sure you've got the right line. Now, it sounds logical to be at the most direct point. However, you need to bear in mind that that's probably where the faster swimmers are going to be. And if you're not one of those, it might actually be a bit more hectic and chaotic for you and slow you down overall. So try to find out from other swimmers what sort of pace they're going to be swimming at and place yourself accordingly. It tends to be the slower swimmers further out because then they have a slightly clearer water. You also don't want to be stuck behind slow swimmers because that's going to make it a little bit harder to that first buoy marker. And talking of the first buoy marker, that is really key. You need to make sure you know where it is, but which direction you're going around it. So say the course is clockwise, you're going to be turning right around that first buoy. Sometimes it's better to start a little bit further to the left. It might be slightly further, but you're going around the masses and you won't have such an acute turn when you come to the buoy, and that's where it does tend to get a little bit clogged up. Now, some swim starts can be rolling. You might be put into pens according to your swim pace. So that's great. You know you're going to be with swimmers of a similar ability. And if it's quite a small event, you might be able to choose where you go and when you start. And if you have a friend or a fellow competitor you know is a very similar swimmer to you, then maybe you guys can have a bit of a strategy together so you can really work together to nail that start.
Okay, another tip for a faster swim start has to be sighting. This isn't just useful for the start, but also for the rest of the swim for that matter. Now, as we've just mentioned, the course markers will hopefully be nice and clear, and they often are from land, but once you get in the water and you're submerged in the water, can often be quite hard to see, particularly with the choppiness of the water and other swimmers splashing around you. So we'd advise before you start, standing on that start line or close to that start line and looking forward towards that first buoy and getting really dialed into the direction and that fastest line possible to that first buoy. And in addition to that, check to see if there's anything that lines up with that buoy beyond it that's more clear and obvious. Perhaps it's a large tree, a tower, or a boat. Something that when you quickly glance up and sight whilst you're swimming, you can perhaps see more obviously than the buoy itself. Because after all, when we're trying to get this fast swim start, you don't want to be sighting every other stroke. You want to put your head down and really get into rhythm and swim as fast as you possibly can. And then last but not least, I want to talk about kick. Now this is a really important one because as triathletes we quite often think that we need to save our legs for the bike and the run, which obviously we do need to do, but if you think about it, the best way to accelerate in the swim is with our legs, by kicking. Think you can quickly move our legs like that, it takes a lot longer to turn our arms over. So if we really want to accelerate and get our speed up at the start of that swim, suggest kicking your legs nice and hard and then settling them down into a nice rhythm soon after.
Well, we've covered a lot today when we're talking specifically about the swim start, which is actually such a small part of the overall triathlon. However, it is the beginning of your whole race and you want to start it off well. So by following these tips, being fully prepared, you're going to end up having a far better day out if you get some of these practices in. So hopefully you've learned quite a lot, you've enjoyed it. Give us a like if you have. Remember, we're on social media. You can follow us as a channel there, and you can also subscribe and follow us on YouTube.